Welcome to episode number 2 of the Nurture with Grace podcast with yours truly, John and Ruth Kema.
Hello. Hi there.
So in this episode, we wanted to delve deeper in terms of what to do after you've had an autism diagnosis.
That's right.
Yeah. When you've gone there, you've done your SD test, first of all, these tests can take so long just to get an autism diagnosis test. It could take you months sometimes. I think the first time we signed up for the test, the wait list was about 12 months. But luckily, someone canceled and they were able to squeeze us in after 3 months of waiting. And then we finally got the tests.
And for us, even after we had it done, it still did take a while before we could get the results. And
but I think they told us a little bit.
Yeah,
they told us
you do get to know.
They give us the preliminary.
The preliminary results.
Yeah,
you generally tend to have 2 practitioners.
Yeah.
So
maybe before we go to the actual test results, should we give them a bit of an idea, a background in terms of some of the things, some of the actual signs we noticed in our son that made us think, okay, I think we need to get this assessment done.
Absolutely. So our son, as we said in our first episode, he was growing pretty well initially, good feeders. He slept well. I mean, as an infant, not so much, but I guess that happens to a lot of babies. It wasn't probably until maybe 18 months when we probably started sort of, looking at kids his age, and we noticed, he's still not talking. So that's obviously a classic. And then our son would just love running around. He would just run nonstop when we took him to the park.
I think what we've learned is he did not have a sense of space. He would run into things. He would bump into kids. He would bump into objects. He would just run.
Yeah, he had no sense of awareness of where things are and all that. And just very high energy. Now, most boys do have high energy. We know that, more than girls. But he was excessive energy. And again...
Still is.
Yes, still is. The energy definitely hasn't gone anywhere. So we do need to make sure we take him to the park so he can run around and use up his energy. I think we mentioned a little bit about meltdowns, and we did mention there's a big difference between tantrums and meltdowns. So tantrum is when, he wants to have ice cream for dinner. Most kids probably would prefer that. Meltdown, they'll be having the best time of their lives, and then from nowhere, from 0 to 100, they will be having a meltdown, which is very challenging to console them as a parent, and it's really painful for us. Just watching your child crying for, it could go for a long time. It could go for 45 minutes. It's not just crying. He rolls on the ground. It's uncontrollable. There's nothing you can do to help them during that moment because they're in full sensory overload, and you don't even see it coming. So it's quite a lot for a parent. Yeah.
And I think the other thing we notice is the childcare. When you took him to childcare, around 18 months, because that's when we really started. We took him to childcare earlier. He got too sick. It became too much. We withdrew him from childcare, and we took him to childcare properly at 18 months. The childcare workers started to notice, some of the senior educators started noticing a few things, and they said, hey, it might be worth checking. It might be worth, starting some early interventions, getting some speech. And once again, for us, we were noticing, but like I said, we were so much in denial, isn't it? So we started, so childcare highlighted it, and then we started going to speech therapy. And that is when the speech therapy did an assessment, and they said, your child has an advanced developmental delay. It's like a big dagger on your chest, on your heart.
Yeah, I think they call it severe delay.
Severe delay, speech delay.
Yeah.
Once again, I think we're still very much in denial.
We were, because we could see it, but we could see some signs. Like we could see him even when he was younger, rocking a bit.
Yeah, he would rock a bit.
So, and I remember seeing that, and I remember even talking to a friend of mine, and I remember telling them, I've seen a few things, but I don't think my son is autistic. I work in the health profession, so I do know I did know what autism was, but I just was like, no, I don't think he is.
But was
I
it because when you said you don't know what autism was, is because your perception of autism versus what we've now come to appreciate what autism really is very different, because we both work in the healthcare industry. I've worked as a disability support worker, so I've dealt with the extreme side of autism. And you've worked as a nurse. Once again, you've dealt with the extreme side of autism, where people are violent or this kind of stuff. So when we hear the word autism, we come to extremes. We don't realize it's a spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our son is a gentle giant.
And because he was always happy,
always happy
I
child.
suppose I had not seen young kids of that age with autism, so I probably did not know what to expect at that age. But we did see the signs, but we just thought, no, it's just something, he'll get over it. And some other signs are stimming, so vocal stimming. Vocal stimming is, they can be sort of squealing with very high notes. I normally say maybe he'll be a soprano one day in the music industry. And it could be going for, quite a while. And the reason they do these things is actually for regulation. They're trying to regulate themselves.
Yeah. It could be steaming. I think he flaps as well.
Yeah, flapping. They flap their hands.
And different kids might do steaming in a different way.
Yeah. There's different way to do steaming. So these are things we actually had to learn.
Yeah. So, sorry, just to define steaming, I think steaming is, we can only define steaming. Is it, would you define it as some sort of repetitive behavior that they do in order to regulate themselves?
Absolutely.
That they have absolutely no control over. So if my son is flapping his hands like that, you cannot just go and tell him, hey, Ian, stop flapping your hands, because you're really interrupting his normal, I won't call him normal, neurotypical people.
Yeah.
You are able to regulate yourself.
Absolutely.
You're able to regulate yourself. You're able to regulate your emotions. You're able to regulate the way you do things. But a lot of people with autism, they are not able to regulate themselves. So steaming is a way they're able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because for people with autism, a lot of them, everything is felt in high doses. So, for example, if it's lights, they really feel the lights. It's too bright. So for a neurotypical person, they will be like, oh yeah, I'm all right. They will be feeling it in big waves. Sounds
like even up until now, our son will still get scared of very loud noises. Will still scare him.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as going to the bathroom and drying your hands, you just all these sharp loud noises, they really startle him.
Yeah. So everything sensory. So sensory overload. Anything that is sensory, hearing, seeing, sound, smells, textures. So our son used to eat really well, but as time progressed, he started becoming really picky. So that really took us by surprise, because as a child, he seemed to just enjoy his foods. So at the time, we quite did not understand how come he's not eating this. He can only eat very few types of foods. Again, sensory. So it's learning. We are learning all these things and going, okay, something is different here.
Absolutely. So yeah, we notice all these signs, and then obviously eventually, and like I said, what you notice from your child could be different. The message we would pass on to someone is, from our own experience, is if you look at the normal markers, a child is supposed to have a certain milestone they're supposed to have in a certain age. Yes, it's important to be patient, because every single kid is on his own journey, and no kid is going to do exactly the same. But if you notice that your kid is running behind in a lot of milestones that you expect a child to be having at a certain age, and you have some sort of concern, it's probably worth following through that concern, because a lot of times we're in denial and you think, he'll be fine, he'll grow out of it. There's nothing wrong with investigating that and making sure that following through that, getting support, getting advice, going to your GP who was able to say, I think you should get an autism assessment. He is a little bit behind in his milestones. So don't ignore it. That's what we're trying to say. Don't just say they'll be right, they'll do that. That's what we found from our experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, I think we mentioned this before, especially people from our background, because I have heard this in the past or read this, because I think we did mention we've done a lot of research. We're still doing it. We're still learning. There are people who believe autism only affects different culture, like probably
Yes.
not this culture, but the other culture.
Let's just say
That is a misconception. Autism affects everyone.
Everybody.
It does not matter where you're from, what skin color you have,
Yep.
short or tall.
Yeah,
it does not matter.
It does not discriminate.
It does not. It affects everybody.
Yeah.
So it's just a journey that we get to embrace as we walk along.
So okay, so we've noticed a sign. We've gone through. We've had initial test. I think the biggest shock for us was we expected him to be a certain level, because autism there's level 1, level 2, level 3. We expected him to be maybe level 1, mild autistic, but then the diagnosis we got were a lot more severe than what we expected. Do you want to just walk through
absolutely. So yes, as you said, there's they normally give you 3 levels: 1, 2, and 3. So for our son, when they gave us, and as we said, so normally they have 2 practitioners, and there's testing involves a lot of things. Like it's a rigorous test. You don't just go and they ask you a few questions, that's it. So normally they'll ask you, you'll go through a lot of filling questionnaires. So they'll, just so they can work out, how it all works. If it's childcare, they'll send them questionnaires as well. So we had all that. And then when we went there, so we had a psychologist and we had a speech pathologist. You might have a pediatrician. They're very few, and that's why the waiting lists are really long. But there's always 2. And they do them individually. And also they do an observation of the child in a play-based learning environment. So one parent will probably be with the child, or if the child feels safe enough, they could just observe them playing. They try and have communication with them. And then, so it's done independently. One parent with one practitioner, the other parent with the other practitioner, and then
I don't think it's done independently.
Notes.
It could be because I think the reason why we were supposed to both go in and talk to the pediatrician, the psychologist, and then we're supposed to leave the speech pathologist with Ian. But that was a time. It was really, he was going through those are the times we used to struggle with separation.
Yeah.
We would go through. We would drop him off to childcare. He would cry. We would drop him off to the kids program in church. He would cry. So those are the times when separation was a big problem. Right now we are very lucky. As soon as we drop him off in a place where there's toys, as long as he can see toys or other children, he's good to go. See you, mom. Bye bye. Bye bye, dad. So yeah, we got the we got the diagnosis, and then they come out and tell us the initial results. What was going through your mind at that time? I'll share what was going through the mind.
I suppose for me, once I had sort of gone through the questionnaire and the questioning that they were asking me, as I said, I'm a health practitioner, so I could see where it was going. But even then, I think I was still in denial. I was kind of at that stage. I think I knew he's definitely autistic from the way they were asking me questions.
Yeah.
And the things that they were saying. So I kind of thought, okay, here we are. So they're probably just going to say, all right, he's autistic. Because, at one point I actually even thought, oh, okay, I had traumatic childbirth. Maybe that affected him. And I did discuss that as well with them.
Yeah.
But then I think as the questions went along, it was quite apparent to me, I think he's autistic. But in my brain, I thought, okay, they'll just say, yep, he's...
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
There's a part you mentioned there about the traumatic childbirth, and it was brutal. I was in the delivery room where she went through. Yeah, salute. But the reason why I interrupted you that way is because as parents of autistic kids, it's very, very common to think that it's something we did that caused it.
Yeah.
Right? For you, it was a case because he had a traumatic birth. You thought, I had traumatic birth, so that's why he's autistic.
Yeah, so I thought he's logically behind.
Or they did some stuff, they pulled him up with that twister thing. So that's why he's like that. Or a lot of other factors. And one thing we forget is autism is not a disease. It's not something that you did that happened. This is this is a genetic thing.
Yeah.
So you could have had a good birth, a bad birth, but it's a genetic thing. Yes, there are environmental factors, but I think the biggest thing that a lot of parents do is when they get the news, they blame themselves, and then there's all this cultural, and stigma and all that kind of stuff that happens around that topic, that we blame ourselves as opposed to and that can really, really be debilitating in terms of us blaming ourselves, and that can stop us from actually getting the support we need to support our children. So yeah, anyway, back to you get the results and the expectations and how you felt on that day. And
so then obviously they came, the psychologist is the one who came to talk to us, and just from the looks on her face, it tells a lot. I could tell this is, I don't know, but it's definitely autism. But in my brain I was still thinking, okay, it's going to be mild autism, we'll be right. And then I do remember her giving us the diagnosis, and she said, no, it's level 3 autism with level 2 behaviors. So, and I remember when she said that, and I was like, what? So it kind of it was a shock to both of us.
Yeah.
For me, I'm the sort of person, when I receive hard news, I go into shock, but I don't absorb it. I sort of just think, okay, so what do we need to do? My brain just goes, all right, I need to find information. We're going to beat this thing. We're going to just do whatever we need to do. So for me, it didn't sink. I sort of just went to do, okay, so tell us more about this. So what does this mean? What do we need to do? And I remember looking at my husband, and I could see he was just hit like a ton of bricks. And I was like, okay, this is tough.
No, it was really, really tough because, like I said, I expected it to be like a level 1. And a lot of thoughts go through your mind when that happens. You're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Will my child ever be able to be independent? Will he ever be able to live on his own? Will he ever be able to have an independent life? And I think as a parent, you have so many dreams that you have for your kids of how you expect. You have dreams in terms of what you want your kids to be, and you've also got dreams in terms of how you envision the parenting journey and how you interact your kids moving forward to be. And then to see almost like that kind of disappear, it was such a big problem. And like I said, how you talked about most parents will go through some sort of a grieving process, and it's not you're grieving the loss of your child. Your child is right here with us, and we love our child a bit. We would not, if we have to go back and do this again, we would still pick him with all his quirks and the way he is. We love him just the way he is. The grieving process for us is you're grieving the dreams and the hopes you have. And for us, it's starting to realize that things will never be the same.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily the same, or what we thought was going to be is never going to happen.
It's going to be different.
It's going to be different, and we're going to have to sort of change. We're going to have to not change, but we're going to have to sort of
realign
our lives, align expectations, align everything. And we've had to really dramatically realign our lives and expectations. Like I said, this podcast is a very good example. We never envisioned ourselves to be podcasters or YouTubers or people in social media. Ruth and I, we're very private. I mean, if you look online, we barely share the kids' photos or photo of our sons because we're very private. We don't want to do that. So right now, even doing this, we are kind of feeling very exposed. But in a way, there's the emotional roller coaster we went through and the things we've learned along the way. And what we're trying to create with this podcast is what we wish we had. Or we're trying to share what we wish we knew then when we started. Because like I said, there's a lot of stuff that we've come to learn in the process, and we're hoping to be able to be that resource for other people, and obviously be able to bring in other people who can help people along the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And as you're saying, it's a process, and if you're out there and you're sort of somewhere in that journey, we get you. It
We
took
get
us a long time, and as I said, you know, like we're in the health industry, so we know what the statistics and health and all those things say. But it's a process, and you know, that's when we kind of started really going, okay, this is where we are, this is what we're feeling. And I guess acknowledging the feeling and knowing, okay, now what? Who do we talk to? What do we do next? And it's tough, this process.
And we're still going through that whole process. I wonder, throughout this all through the episodes, I don't want to create the illusion of like, we're here, we've conquered this, we are now fully involved people, we've fully accepted. We still go through moments. We're so grateful for how much our son has grown and developed, and some of the changes we've seen in him. My God, it's such a miracle to see how far he's come.
Absolutely.
But I don't want to create the illusion that we're here, we've kind of dealt with it. This is something we're working through. We work through. We go through sometimes we go through very high highs and very low lows. It can be a very emotional roller coaster. So I don't want to create the illusion that, oh yeah, we're here, we've conquered, we're good. No. We go through the whole process. So if you are a parent, a grandparent, or someone, a loved one close to someone, and you see that, see them going through that, or you feeling that for them, just know that you're normal. It's normal. What message of encouragement do you have to someone who is just got the news and is still navigating, and they don't know, like they're just feeling so lost and lost? What can you share from your own experience?
I think it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. It's okay to cry. It's okay to ask questions. Why? What? It's okay. For us in the Christian faith, if you read in the book of Psalms, it talks about that. It shows grief. It's written there when people are going through tough times. So it's okay to go through that. It's okay to find supports and tell someone this is hard. Because it is hard. And so we did. Cried, we went through the whole process, did not know. I remember for me, even the first time, saying the word autism was really hard for me in relation to autism and my son. Like, I knew about autism in the health professional, but relating that with myself and my son, that was really challenging. So it's okay to feel that. But once you've gone through that process, it's now, again, finding the right people, the right supports, which we'll be talking about in some other episodes. And, sticking close to those who are close to you, whether it's your husband, partner, family, friends, your community, whether it's church or whatever other communities that you have. Finding that safe person, because you need a safe person to talk to.
You need safe people. But you remember that I think because we got our diagnosis around March. I remember February, March there. I remember for a whole month we were bummed.
Oh, absolutely.
We were just walking around the house.
It was tough.
And I remember there were nights when you'd be like, you'd come home and you're like, oh, I can't do it today. I can't deal with emotion. I can't deal with emotion. Go deal with your son. And I kind of felt like as soon as we got it felt funny. Like as soon as we got the diagnosis, all of the behaviors that were hiding in the peripherals just started coming out. He started kind of showing all sorts of behaviors.
I think we were more aware.
We were more aware, or maybe we were more understanding. But I think there was a good month or so where we were pretty much.
It was challenging.
We were semi-depressed, walking around the house with our head held low. So like I said, if you're going through that,
it's normal.
You are normal. You're not a bad person. You're not a bad parent. You're doing the very best you can with what with what you have. We were bummed for a while.
And I remember as a Christian, as I said, that's my faith. I do remember after the diagnosis, because I do remember, we even had fasting and prayers in our church a few weeks before. And I do remember once it hit home and I was like, God, how did this happen? How did you allow this? Like I went through those hard questions. And it's okay to ask those questions.
Absolutely.
And, God was still there with us. He never left us. Even during that time, he was our comfort. he still brought verses to comfort us and brought the right friends, the right people when we were actually able to talk to them about it. Because it took a while to even be able to talk to our closest family members about it, because we just needed to process it. It just took a little while to process. So if you find yourself in that situation where it's like processing it is so tough, like how do you even mention it? How do you even agree to it? I think one of the things that I forgot to mention in the diagnosis was it was non-verbal. They said he was non-verbal,
Yes.
level 3 with level 2 behavior. So, it was crushing. Like, what, non-verbal? He will never talk.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, it's okay, guys. He's talking now. We'll talk about the process later. We still believe in a God of miracles, but at the same time, we were okay once we got on the process to say, okay, God, you will walk with us in this journey, regardless of what it means for us.
And I think the biggest thing I had when I was seeking God throughout this whole process was, I remember when we had his baby dedication in church.
Yeah.
There are words that were spoken to him about his life.
Yeah.
Right. There were words that were spoken about his life in terms of the kind of person he was going to be. He was going to do big and wonderful things for the kingdom of God. And for me, what really helped me was to start to remind myself that God has a big plan for my child. Okay, I have a big plan for my child, which is normal. Every parent has a plan and a purpose for their children, which is normal. Okay, that's how God has wired us. We want the best for our children. We have dreams and hopes for what our kids should be. But God has got infinitely bigger plans for a plan and a purpose for my child, including myself and you. I have to remind myself that regardless of whether he will ever be able to talk or ever be able to live by himself, the plan and the purpose that God has for him will still come to pass.
Yeah.
And God will use him in a big and mighty way.
Yeah.
So I started I started doing this affirmation that I do with him every night, where I started speaking the words that were spoken to him in the baby dedication. You're gonna do big and mighty things. You got a big calling in your life. You're gonna do big and mighty things. You gotta, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Jeremiah 29:11. Speaking it in his
exactly.
life.
I started speaking that to his life, and I've been speaking that to his life for the last few years, every night. So much so that if I don't do it now, he requested. He says, "Daddy, I want to talk," which is, "Daddy, affirmation."
And we always remind him that he's fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yeah.
Which is something he's actually saying now. He's speaking it over his life.
He's now
himself.
starting to speak it on his own life.
Yeah.
We actually did like a little custom. We made a little book for him to make sure that we remind him of
what the Word of God says about his life.
What the Word of God says about his life.
And so we've fully trusted God in this process. But at the same time, we still need to continue doing the interventions.
Yeah.
Despite
the intervention. So like I said, there's that. So like I said, there is that initial acceptance phase that you obviously need to go through. Get all the help you need to get. If you need to get to a counselor, if you need to have a good cry, if you need to have a good supportive people around us. And we're really, really blessed. We have very good people around us. We've got our mom here who helps us a lot. And she was very accepting. Even her, it was a big struggle, but she was very, very accepting of the whole process. We had to go through the process of educating people around us who had misconceptions. And our family has been really, really good. They've been really, really accepting. We have to educate people in terms of like, this is what it is. And I think, thankfully for us, we have good friends of ours like Ken and Jen who've gone through this journey. So they've been such a big support for us in terms of walking the journey with us from their own experience and kind of reassuring us that, what we're going through is okay. The most important thing for us is, and I'm really glad that my wife is the one who takes charge of this whole process, is educating yourself about the process. Do you want to talk about this? Because if you were to look at half through messages that goes through back and forth with us, is my wife sending me a video. Hey, I saw this video about this, how this, whatever. And those things have really been helpful. Do you want to just talk about it and how you've been able to go through the whole process? Yeah.
So I think, as we say, because it's not something we've done before, it's not something you see every day. we had to do a lot of teaching ourselves. It's not very much out there. Like when I was doing my degree, I learned a little bit about it, but not much. So we had to learn for our own perspectives ourselves, not so a lot about autism, but also a lot about ourselves in areas that we need to work on. And we'll talk about this in other episodes. But it's a continuous learning on how we can give our son the best supports that he needs. Because yes, there is the speech and OT, which you mentioned, but there's lots more. So we'll be able to talk a lot more about that in more episodes. But there is a lot of unlearning, learning, and relearning, which we are doing.
I think the most important thing that we've had to look to consider is to make sure that we are still looking after ourselves.
Yeah.
And we are looking after each other.
Yeah.
Because raising an autistic child is full on.
Yeah.
Raising a neurotypical child is full on as it is. Then add the fact that you've got an autistic child with extra needs and emotional regulation issues, meltdowns and all that kind of stuff. And like you think about it, on a typical week, we've got anywhere between 2 to 3 therapy sessions and a whole bunch of other stuff on top of the other things you have to do with the child. So there's a lot there going on. So it's very easy for us as a couple to just say, all right, we just need to support our child and do that kind of stuff. And then we forget the fact that, at the end of the day, we're still mom and dad, we're still a couple. And the best thing we can give our child is mom and dad. One thing I normally observe with our son is he loves the attention of both of us. So we have to constantly take care of ourselves and our marriage in the process. Otherwise, and unfortunately, the sad reality is this is the kind of stuff that drives a lot of family apart. And I'm not here to blame people. I know how hard it is. We know how hard it is in terms of, from an emotional point of view, to manage to navigate this whole process. It draws so much out of you, isn't it? Like we've had to learn so many skills that we're going to share in future episodes. We're going to dedicate a whole episode in terms of the skills we've learned, in order to be able to navigate through this whole process. So it takes so much out of us. And I think one thing I would say as we start to conclude is being open to learning, being able to open to learning this whole process, being able to readjust your expectation and know that as much as you had certain expectations of how your child was going to end up or how life was going to be end up, you're still going to be able to achieve that. A lot of the things we can now see in our son and some of the things we're doing with our sons are things that we only believe for. Like now, for example, 2 years ago, we went on a family trip. And before that, we thought, oh yeah, our son loves trains. So we're going to take him on a vintage train ride down in a place called Victor Harbor, for those of you who know Adelaide. We're going to take him on a vintage train ride, those old steam engines, because he watches so much YouTube videos of steam engines with steam coming out. We thought, yeah, we're going to take him to steam engine. We took him to a steam engine and he cried the whole way because the thing was so loud, and they're not very stable. But now we've come back a year later and he was like, Mommy, Daddy, I want to go on train. And he went on the train. Yes, he did not necessarily enjoy the noise, but he was ecstatic. He was just sitting in the window, staring outside. And as soon as he got to the other end, he couldn't wait to get back on the train back. So for us, it's been about adjusting our expectations. That there's something it's about learning how to adjust your expectations of what you think this is going to go down versus how it actually goes down. And so learning and adjusting expectation is probably the one thing I would say to every single parent with autism or people that care about them, that are supporting them, grandparents and, uncles, aunties, learning and adjusting expectation. What other advice would you have, and from my own experience about someone in terms of what they should do?
And really, I would just say giving yourself grace and compassion.
Absolutely.
Because it's hard work. I mean, parenting is hard work.
Yes.
Nobody said parenting was easy. But, you know, when you have an autistic child, there's extra on top of that. So give yourself grace. You're doing great. Just know you're doing a great job, and it's okay to ask for help from trusted people. As we mentioned before, kudos to our mom. She's amazing. She does great things. Our son loves the grandma, and my siblings as well. Our relatives, our cousins. We are blessed with a great
Our
family
friends.
network. Our friends
Our
from
church.
church. We have great support networks. So we are blessed in that regard. So please don't do this alone. It's tough.
Yeah.
You
And
need some support.
And I think the other thing is being able to open your eyes in terms of supports and activities that are available.
Yeah.
Like now, for example, we have a lot of play groups, we have a lot of play groups, we have a lot of indoor play centers.
Yeah.
And then this year we discovered this play center called We Rock the Spectrum, which is such a beautiful place where a kid can belong. So there's lots of, if you look out, there's lots of facilities and a lot of things that are available for you, that you can do that are appropriate to your child. The most important thing we want to tell you is what you're feeling. You're feeling overwhelmed. That is okay. And you will get through this. You will find the strength within you. But you don't have to do it on your own. Yeah. All right. If there's any feedback or any comments, feel let us know. We're going to be sharing. We're going to be doing more episodes. We share some of the skills we've learned and some of the things we've learned along the way. Feel free to share your story in your comments, and we can't wait to connect with you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.